I believe that we are ready to go. We have a House Bill 198 is on our calendar. Representative Williams has a proposed substitute, LC 332957S. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
You say 332957S?
Yes, sir. Yep. Okay. All right. Why don't we go ahead and why don't you explain your bill?
All right, House Bill 198 does away with the 180-day mandatory school calendar in the state of Georgia and replaces it with hours of instruction. There's a lot of math in this bill. It's been done correctly, and Betsy helped me with it. We can go through it sort of section by section if you would like.
I think actually that's probably a good idea.
Section 1, if you can see where they've struck the mandatory 180-day part and replaced it for the 08 and 09 year and 09 and 10 year with a 765-day hour minimum. For 2 years, the current year and the next year, there's a lower minimum. You need to understand that it was calculated on a 170-day figure instead of a 180-day. If the bill passes, those 2 years may or may not, the local systems may or may not use that, but after the 2 years, you can go into the, you go back to the, I'm losing my train of thought here. After the 2 years, you go back to the 180-day calculation. And that's what those Section 2 explains.
Okay.
And this is all decided by the local board.
Okay. So
the flexibility.
So the board isn't mandated to drop the number of hours of curriculum. It just gives them the discretion to drop it down, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right.
And that's what the whole bill does. After I talked with Miss Corin here that's here today, and she requested that I put in a public notice section in there.
Okay.
And there will be public hearings, a requirement of the local board to do 2 public hearings if they decide to alter their calendar to less than a 5-day week. My local system ran some numbers for me, and it was about a $450,000 a year savings if they chose to go to a 4-day week. And that was based on just utilities and food and gas and those kind of things. We didn't even factor in substitute teachers. And other states that have done this, gone to 4-day weeks, it's been proven that teacher attendance and student attendance improves. Obviously, you're only there 4 days. And you can save a lot on substitute teacher pay, which is all local money. So if you factored that in, my system would have been probably in the $600,000 range. And I'm a pretty small system. They haven't indicated they want to do it, but they helped me gather some figures there.
Okay. Okay. All right. Continue. All right. Any questions from the committee?
Yes,
All right.
in looking over the bill, and knowing my public school system, how many hours a day is this figured? Because the problem I have is one I've had for years. I don't believe in this blocks that they keep teaching. Now, if we went this route, then would they still be able to do 3 blocks a day?
It's 4.
4 blocks now?
I taught school 18 years ago, so I'm not real familiar. Betsy Howerton helped me do the calculations based on the hours that kindergartners go, different ages that they go. And Amy, can you help me with that?
It's 4 a day. And I don't see how this would affect block system at all.
Okay. In the others, in the
Well, you're looking at a lot of
the research I-
4 90-minute blocks.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the research I did on it was
That's
But
6
it's
plus
still
hours.
a great.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's have the conversation public. Actually, what you're saying is, might be interesting to the rest
Yeah,
of us.
okay, go
it's
ahead.
about 45, anywhere from 38 to 45 minutes a day on all the added to the school day that I've read for different places like in Kentucky and other states that have done it. So,
Representative Smith.
Question. So what you're proposing is that grades 1 through 3, how many days is that at 765 hours?
which line are you on?
36.
36. That's based on 170 days.
So you're proposing,
There's two sections there.
right, you're proposing the current school year and the next school year that grades 1 through 3 only go to school 170 days.
I'm not proposing. I'm giving
You're
that
an
school-
option.
Yeah, that option.
Well, our test scores like they are.
Is that a question?
Yeah, with our test scores
I
like they are.
understand. My wife is a school teacher. I'm proposing that we give the local systems the flexibility to adjust their calendar based on our current financial situation.
Well, how many days is the 12,935 hours?
That's grades 6 through 12, 990 hours. There's
Okay,
a comma there.
how many days is that?
That's 180.
Okay, so they can decrease the number of days. All right, when they go down to 170 days, is that 10 days of furloughs? Because they're paid based on a 180-day school year.
That's a good question. If this local board decides to go to this option of based on 170 days, then it would be cutting their school year 10 days.
Okay, so they'd be paid for 170 days of actual teaching versus 180.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, this would also allow a system, because you're now changing it to hours instead of days.
Mhm.
This would actually allow a system to extend days
They could go.
and go Monday through Thursday and go 155 or 160 days if they choose. And
That's correct.
thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
I'm still hung up a little bit
Representative
here because when you take 4 blocks, even at 90 minutes per, that's 6 hours a day, and 6 times 180, I get 1,080 hours, not
I knew
935.
somebody'd bring a calculator.
Yeah, you know. And my next question on the thing is, where in here does it say you go back to 180 days after 2 years?
Because the original bill said that we were basing on hours of instruction based on 180. This section up top, the second paragraph starting with line 36, if you just do those figures, they're based on a calculation of 170 just for those 2 school years.
Yeah, but we go back to 180 days worth of hours.
Right.
Right. That was my misunderstanding. I thought you meant we went back to the 180.
The overall bill changes it forever and ever
I'm for that.
to hours, and then just for these 2 years, that gives them a lower minimum. It doesn't tell them, it just gives them a lower minimum.
Okay. Anyone else from the committee? All right. Representative Williams, thank you. Let's see if anyone from the audience wishes to testify. I apologize. I don't think we have a sign-up sheet. Therefore, I'll accept anybody on a first-come, first-served basis. Come on up, Irv.
I'm familiar with the origin of this bill. Representative Williams and I have talked about it. Oh, I didn't do my niceties. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Herb Garrett with GSSA. I apologize.
Thank you very much.
I guess my question about this is that it appears that we're poised to pass a bill that anticipates the possibility of a fiscal calamity if we're actually talking about knocking 10 days off the school year. The question becomes, when Mark and I had talked about this bill earlier, the bill was done simply to rearrange hours and to talk about days in terms of hours, to give school districts the opportunity, if they wish to go to 4-day weeks or to arrange their school year differently. This one appears to be set to allow the opportunity to cut 10 days off of the school year. And my question becomes, who makes that choice and at what cost? If Wayne County, where Representative Williams lives, decides to cut 10 days off of their school year, but Henry County, where I live, doesn't, how does that affect state money? Surely to goodness, you folks aren't going to pay a 190-day teacher salary schedule when one system's only going 170 days and another system is going 190, 180 student days. Is this bill meant to give the state the flexibility to cut 10 days off in the face of a potential fiscal calamity, or is this truly meant to give local districts this option? And if they do choose this option, what impact does that have on state salary schedules and the money that comes from the state? Yeah. That's not clear to me, and I'm just asking the question because I don't know.
The intention is to give, if I understand, I'll let the author perhaps speak to that after you finish, but the intention, from my understanding, is to give the systems greater flexibility, that it doesn't necessarily affect. In other words, we're not going to be giving one system $1 amount based on the number of days they have and another one based on the number of days they have, but to simply regarding within the umbrella of QBE, for instance, once we provide you with a certain block of money, in the hopefully unlikely situation where we are faced with an economic collapse far worse than what we're seeing right now, but within the unfortunate remote possibility, it gives the local school system simply more flexibility. That's the anticipation, as I understand it.
Then I do want to raise the issue that
Yes,
the teacher salary schedule is based on an appropriation by the General Assembly, and it's done based on a 190-day school year for everyone. And you do run that. You have that piece sitting out there where you might be sending school districts the same amount of money for different amounts of days, and I just think that's an issue that needs to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think somebody has a question for you. Representative Smith.
Yes, sir.
Can't you do this 4-day work week anyway?
You can, but right now the origin of this bill was to allow school districts to make that decision without having to jump through a bunch of hoops and ask for permission from the state board. Right now, in order to do it, you'd need a waiver from the state board. This bill, the discussions on this bill started last summer when gas was $4 a gallon, and one of the hot topics was how much you could save. As a matter of fact, Representative Williams even mentioned how much Wayne County would save just on fuel alone. That's where this whole thing started in Colorado in the mid-'70s when we had a gas crunch. 4-day weeks were all the rage out there, but this bill would allow systems to do it without having to jump through any hoops.
11, is that? Representative Porter.
I understand that we talked about this more when we were not sure what the stimulus package would bring. And I understand going to instruction, but why in the world would we now that we have that allow for a 2-year period of 170 days? When that's now been solved, when all that would do would lower instruction time. There's no other way that could be understood. And why we would ever be for that, especially now we know we have the money, whether we have the money or not, I would agree that we should do it, but now, what would be the need to do that? Go to 170 days.
I think the sole purpose there is to simply give the school systems a greater amount of flexibility should the economy continue to slide far worse than what we anticipate.
But it says it for a 2-year period, but
Yeah.
now that we have the stimulus, we know for this year, in '09, we passed that out, we plugged in the money.
Yep.
We know that we'll have it for 2010, that amount of money.
We know we have a certain amount of money.
A certain amount. And we know that we have pushed most of what's in the surplus into whatever can be used to 2010 because we're not using it in the '09.
That's correct.
So the idea of going to 170 days the urgency of that or even the flexibility of that. The flexibility is on keeping the same amount of instruction, but give it some flexibility. All that would do for 2 years would lower the amount of instruction for 2 years. We're in the world, I mean, we're just going to continue to fall further behind by even suggesting that. So now that we've got those concerns off the table, I think we ought to look at the merits of whether we want to do that or not.
Well,
And at the right time, I guess
Yeah.
I'll be ready for a motion on that part of it.
I understand, and you are. And the question is whether, yes, based on the dollar figures that we're seeing right now, it appears that we're going to be able to be stabilized. But then again, we've also faced some declining revenue figures that we hadn't anticipated just 2 or 3 months ago. And whether we want to, within this limited period of time, want to give us some additional flexibility, give our school system some additional flexibility, which we have to do while we're in session, rather than coming back in an emergency session later on.
Right.
That's the only question that I would have.
As reluctant as I would be for the same of instruction time,
Mhm.
I could see that necessary. But why would we do 170? Why would we lower that? Simply lowers the amount of instructional time when you go to the 170 days, even for the 2 years.
I'm hoping that we'll never have to get there.
Right. Well,
I'm
then I'll be ready
Yeah.
for a motion on that part. That's the part that troubles me.
I
I understand the instruction. You know, I may not agree with it. I understand doing some flexibility. I'm
Yeah.
agreeable, but the reduction to 170 days for 2 years, is there anything that says the student achievement will be better? It couldn't. Dropouts would be less. I mean, that just seems policy-wise the wrong part of this bill.
I respect that opinion.
And I guess I need to ask him, I mean, why would we do that for 2 years? I mean, does that make any sense on administering this and having to manage the budget from local systems?
Well, I think if we were facing the kind of fiscal problem that I thought we were facing last week, and maybe getting worse, then it almost makes sense. I don't
For the flexibility on instruction.
Yes, but if there's money to plug the holes, and you guys approved $145 million yesterday to help plug part of that hole, it's a difficult argument. It is.
Okay. Who's 16?
Me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a teacher, I share those same concerns. I agree to the bill. I agree with the bill, but I do think that there should be 180 instructional days and that the hours should be based on 180 days and not 170. Herb, you've just answered that question for me. I guess I need to ask the author. How would you feel about it? Well, 180, but 10 of those are post and pre and in the middle of the year days.
The overall bill is that just the 2 years there is an option for that local system to go there. We're not mandating that you've got to just teach 170 days. I mean, the whole bill's about flexibility and local control, and I might be corrected, but I think under IE squared, with all these options available under IE squared right now, like Lynette signed up with, I know the hours of instruction is, but I don't know the mandatory, the hours per se, but they have that flexibility under that.
That's correct.
Oh. Who's 8? Representative Cassis.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I can direct this to Mr. Garrett, but maybe even to the author, to yourself, since I walked in late. But did we address the competing bill that's in rules right now that has changed the days to hours?
I'm not aware of any other bill that's sitting in.
Yes, Representative Graves' bill.
193, House Bill 193.
193 passed the Education Committee, and it does change the days to hours. So how would we reconcile both bills?
Hold on. That's a little over here. What are you, Representative Porter? 11?
I think that's right, 11.
Yeah.
unless we amend this to say the same thing by taking out the 170 days, which is the difference between
Yeah.
the two.
The 170 days.
Or hold that bill and let that one go.
But I'm sure Rules Committee is going to find a difficulty here.
Is Tom's bill grades 1 through 12?
It is. It's.
You need to step up to the mic, Representative
Yeah.
Williams.
It's. It's the bill in the committee. It's K through 12.
Okay. I knew he was working on one, and I didn't know if he went grades 1 through 12.
And it is in rules right now, so I don't know what.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Anyone else wishing to testify? Yeah, come on up. Thank you, Herb.
Thank you, Chairman Lindsay. Tom Womack with the Professional Association of Georgia Educators. When I talked with Representative Williams earlier in the session about his bill, the idea of 170 days never came up. And the 180 days for classroom instruction, students, teachers, time on task in the classroom is needed for every student in this state. And more hours are needed for some others. And over the years, the state has funded some of the after-school programs, some of the remedial programs, and that's been good, and it's helped us to get some students on grade level, and that's good. The 190 days for teachers, that they need those days for professional learning. Over the years, the number one area for soft money in the state has been professional learning monies, and all of you know that. And we need more and more time to help our teachers become better teachers by providing them with professional learning opportunities that will build on their strengths and help them to be better teachers, and in turn to help the students become better students and more successful. I understand that that Representative Williams, I believe he referred to the fact that we are not mandating 170 days. But I believe the intent, as I understand it, the intent of 170 days versus 180 is to save the state money. Now, it is true that a local system can go beyond what the state funds. But currently throughout this state, every local system in the state of Georgia has had to pick up a lot of underfunding over the last number of years. And y'all have had to make some tough decisions, and we know that. So if it's an option to go 170 and the local system goes to 180, the local system would have to pick up the difference, as I see it. And as a former local school superintendent, 14 and a half years in Colquitt County, you know, teaching and learning in the classroom is the most important thing. It's the most important thing that we can support and push in this state. We had a third grade promotion policy. I believe it was part of QBE program in 1987. We had, all of us got together the names and the numbers of students that we needed to retain or have remedial work during the summer. We put a dollar figure on it. It cost a lot of money. It went away. I've often wondered where Georgia K-12 public education would be today if somehow then the Democrat-controlled, House and Senate and governor's office had funded that program. And we all know that the research states if we have students on grade level by the end of the third grade, we'll not be spending good money after bad later on for remediation, the more students we have. So thank you very much, and I we, as a page organization, would certainly not support a reduction in the number of days funded by the state for teaching and learning in a classroom. Thank you.
Excuse me, I think you have a question. Would you like to take one?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I have a question maybe for you or
Okay.
for the committee, not specifically to Tom.
All right. We'll get to the questions, unless something you want to respond to. Anyone else?
I'll be glad to respond to the question.
Okay. All right. Anyone else wishing to testify? You do wish to testify?
Yeah, I didn't know. Sorry.
Okay. Come on up then.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Heather Miner. I work with Georgia Association of Educators. I thank Representative Williams for working with us throughout the process of this bill. In the beginning, we thought we would be able to support this bill. However, it has changed to where it has, become 170 days, which is something that we wouldn't particularly be in supportive of, due to the fact that, as Representative Porter has already stated, we have this funding that's coming down from the federal government for the 2009 and for the 2010 school years, and we just feel like this is a push before we actually really need it. We do understand giving locals the flexibility, but at this moment we don't feel that it is completely necessary. And also, too, that decreasing the instructional time would actually be, obviously an infraction. There's other countries, there's other states that are pushing for school year round, and this would just be decreasing that, and it's something that GAE would not be in support of. So sadly, we oppose this bill. So.
No problem. Any questions from the committee?
I just would like to say one more time,
That's fine. Go
the
ahead.
key word in this bill is minimum. It's minimum hours, and it gives them flexibility. There's no maximum on it, and it doesn't say how. Nobody wants us to have to short our school year. But you can't hamstring folks with laws if they have to make adjustments at the local level. Just like my business, Representative Porter's business, I've had to lay people off, and I'm glad I don't have to ask permission of the state when I get into having to make adjustments in my own company. But we don't. I agree with Representative Porter. Things have improved in the last few days, but this bill doesn't say you've got to do this or got to do that. But it will not tie their hands if things continue to worsen.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Porter.
Would you be agreeable to amendment, whether you agree or not, we might make it, to take out the 170-day provision?
Representative Porter, I would have to consider that an unfriendly amendment.
Thank you.
Representative Neal.
Representative Williams, let me ask you about maybe another possible amendment and see if we can make it friendly.
Okay.
First of all, I don't think my systems would be affected by this because I'm pretty sure my systems would maintain the 180 days worth of instructional hours. I do see the potential that a system out there, despite the fact that we're able now to fund for the 180 days, may choose to take that minimum amount of instructional hours and try to continue to receive the maximum amount of funds that would be available at the 180 days. I think I understand what you're trying to do with the need to have a mechanism in place if the economy turns and we find that we're not going to be able to do what we now think we're going to be able to do. And certainly this has to be done during session instead of outside of session. Would it be possible, and would you consider it friendly, if so, that instead of having Section B to read as it is, in Section B, grant to the Department of Education the authority to go to those hours given an economic emergency or crisis that would deem severe enough to cause that trigger?
So go to overall instruction.
Go to the overall instructional hours based on 180 days.
Okay.
And
then
then
they would
section
have to apply
B-
for a waiver.
Well, not necessarily even apply for a waiver, but instead of making it, maybe apply for a waiver. That might be a good way to do it. Instead of just putting it out there to where systems have that opportunity, leave it to where the State Department of Education would be able, if necessary, if something happens 6 months down the road and we're not in session to address it, that the State Department of Education could address it if the economy grew or shrank to a situation to where they felt that it would be necessary to allow that amount of flexibility.
It's a lot to think through, but you're just basically saying that you would go through you can do it, but go through a waiver process like you have now.
I just don't want to see us, to be honest with you,
Given
give
that
the
much
school
work.
systems the kind of flexibility to cut to 170
Yeah.
days, and give them that flexibility to do that, whether the economy gets any worse or not, and that's what this bill does.
I'm certainly open to that.
Well, any other comments? I'll tell you what we're going to do. I do appreciate the comments from the committee, and I think some of them are well taken. And we do also have another bill apparently sitting in rules, should that, and I'd like to get a little bit more information on that as well. And perhaps if we have to set up a trigger based on an economic calamity, we can come up with something a little bit more structured than simply lowering the minimum number of days at the present time. So I'm going to exercise my discretion as the chairman and not call for a vote today. I do think it takes a little bit more study, but I do want this bill to stay in our subcommittee, and in case as we progress our way through the rest of the process, we find a need to use it as a vehicle to do something that no one, I emphasize no one, wants to do. But based on some economic realities, we may have to, or set up a more structured trigger, such as what Representative Neal has proposed. So for right now, I'm gonna hold off on a vote at this time, and simply allow us to take another look at it, and also take a look at your hours of instruction versus the other bill that's already out there as well, to see whether or not that answers some of your concerns regarding hours of instructions, or whether we need to simply move this bill forward on hours of instructions.
Okay.
We'll take a look at both of those.
You just get with me.
Okay?
Appreciate
All right.
it.
No other business being before this committee. We're adjourned. Let me tell y'all right now about our schedule for the O10, and I do appreciate everyone being here, and I have so many people from the education community as well. GAE is going to be having their conference on Sunday and Monday, and a lot of folks on the committee want to be able to participate with some of that as well. What we're going to do is we're going to have our first hearing on the O10 budget at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, run from 10 to 12. And the anticipation is the DOE will present its proposed budget for the O10 at that time. And let me also sort of set y'all up as to where we're going to go from there. I anticipate that the following week we would have Superintendent Cox to talk about what she has learned regarding the stimulus package and the applications for money under the stimulus package, as well as have the other departments also testify at that time. And we'll, of course, start setting up additional times for public comments from our various interested groups. But anyway, that's sort of the broad outline. We will have, like I said, a meeting on Monday at 10, and I'll keep you posted on the others, but that's sort of generally where we're going to be going down the road. What I would really like y'all to do, and some of y'all have been very good about this in terms of coming up with specific questions that we want answered from DOE. If you would, I believe everyone has Christine's email address. If you have any between now and Monday, for instance, if you just email Christine the questions that you would like, and let her sort of put together a list for DOE and CC me as well, so I can know exactly what's being asked, so that we can sort of push them as hard as we can for some specific numbers. This year, more than ever, we have had to ask for some very hard questions in order to get us through this economic crisis that we're in. I appreciate everyone's hard work on the 09. Now we just have to quadruple that effort to get us through the 010. Anyway, we're adjourned.